right, welcome back, everyone, to Strange Planet Podcast. And today's topic is going to be about the 14th Amendment. Now, what is the 14th Amendment, and why are we bringing this up? And why is it big news lately? Well, the short answer is the 14th Amendment basically states that any person is disqualified from any political office, whether it's a president, senator, governor, whatever, if they engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the country, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. Now, the reason why you're seeing this in the news as much as you are is because of Trump's insurrection on January 6th. Meaning that if we hold him accountable by the Constitution, as we should, Donald Trump should be automatically disqualified and not allowed to participate in any elections, period, for the rest of his life, for any office, because of his actions against our own country. So now, to provide you with a little more in-depth detail about this situation, I will pass the mic to Rook.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of discussion in the media and amongst people in the political world about whether the 14th Amendment would disqualify Trump from running for president in 2024. And I just wanted to make this issue clear for our listeners and try to, shed some light on it, because I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this, but don't necessarily know what it's about. So under the 14th Amendment, there's in Section 3, now, just as a quick background, the 14th Amendment was passed right after the Civil War. And it was, along with the 13th and 15th Amendments, they were known as the post-Civil War amendments. So they immediately addressed problems such as slavery, like let's not have it anymore, and things like that in terms of rights, individual rights of people. So this particular section, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, specifically was written with Civil War-like sort of situation in mind. However, it is a constitutional amendment and it applies going forward. So it basically says, and I'll actually quote it here, that any person holding federal or state office, quote, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. It bars them from holding public office. So what that means is that anyone who is found to have engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the United States, such as what happened on January 6th, they're supposed to be disqualified from running for public office.
Any office, too.
Right. Whether it's your town dog catcher or president of the United States. And so there's been a lot of talk about this in the media as of late and amongst the constitutional scholars, because this is basically, for all of our worries about Trump possibly getting reelected again, there is an argument, and a very strong one, that he should not even be on the ballot come November of next year. And first of all, I'd like to know, what you guys think of that before I continue.
Well, to be honest, this is the first time, at least especially in recent history, where anything like this has even came up. So this is a kind of a new situation. But there is no denying that he was the ringleader of that crazy circus. So the way I see it is basically the way you put it. You couldn't have said it any clearer with actual dictation there, where he shouldn't be on the ballot. I'm sorry, but he definitely, he himself wanted to be there himself when that January 6th happened. You know what I mean? So even despite him not being there, he still egged it on. You know what I mean? So in my eyes, he's guilty of that.
So let's actually take a look at, earlier this week, there was a leader of the Proud Boys, who was sentenced to 22 years in prison.
I heard about that.
22 years. And that was for engaging in the January 6th insurrection. However, he was not present that day because I think he was, I want to say he was in jail or something, or maybe he had to be in court. I forget the exact reason, but it was actually because he did something with anti-Black Lives Matter. And so he was in trouble for that. So he couldn't show up on January 6th. So he wasn't actually there, but he helped, plan and
Orchestrated.
and orchestrate the January 6th insurrection. And even though he wasn't there, not even in the Capitol on January 6th, he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Now, Donald Trump, he was there in the Capitol, and he was there on stage, whipping the crowd into a frenzy and sending them over to the Capitol to, quote, stop the steal.
Yep.
And for months, he had been, pushing this huge lie in terms of, that the election was stolen from him.
Right. He still says it.
Right. And so, this whole argument would be, well, he didn't actually break in the windows of the Capitol. No, the leader of the Proud Boys got sentenced to 22 years and he didn't even set foot in the Capitol that day. So if he can be held accountable, then certainly Trump can. And they were there for Trump.
Yeah, why else? I mean, think about
it.
it.
And then Trump stood back and stood by while our Capitol was attacked.
These are facts here.
Now, when it comes to actually enforcing, let's just say for the sake of argument that the Constitution bars Trump from running for president. That opens up a huge secondary set of issues in terms of, well, how do you enforce that? Because it's not like the federal government can just say, well, Trump's not on the ballot, because ballots are each run by each state. And so each state would probably have to play a part in the enforcement mechanism of that, because the states print the ballots.
Right.
So, and they each have their own sort of mechanisms for determining who shows up on a ballot and who doesn't. Because you can't just have everyone on the ballot that wants to run for president. There have to be, certain signatures or meet a certain threshold. So there are certain standards that each state has for which candidates get to appear on a ballot and how they run their elections. And that's largely a state-by-state thing. So it could be that in some states, in, say, blue states, they decide, you know what? We're going to buy this 14th Amendment and we're going to take Trump off the ballot, or we're not going to put him on the ballot in the first place. He's disqualified, so sorry, his name just doesn't go on the ballot. And then, of course, Trump will probably sue because he wants his name on the ballot. And then it would probably work its way up to the Supreme Court, which has a lot of Trump appointees on it. So we don't really know what would happen. And they'll have to rule on whether that clause of the 14th Amendment is still constitutional. Because, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous because that is part of the Constitution, but they get to interpret the meaning of the Constitution and whether it applies in this specific circumstance. So it's going to be interesting to see. I can almost guarantee, or I wouldn't say guarantee because nothing's guaranteed in politics anymore, but I am willing to bet that there are going to be challenges in different states to Trump appearing on the ballot, and that some states will make the decision, at least one, to not have Trump on the ballot at all.
Right.
And we'll have to see what happens in terms of it working its way through the courts. And I guarantee that the Supreme Court's going to want to hear the case because it's an important one at that point.
So this is a situation where it's being almost, I'm not saying left upon the states to decide, but it kind of is in a sense. So basically, if some states, especially if they were red per se, decide that they don't see this, then his name would appear on those states' ballots. But then on the opposing ones, then he wouldn't. You're saying it's still
Right.
possible he might.
Well, in blue states, he just wouldn't appear on the ballot. Now, it's going to be interesting because you have swing states who, could swing red or blue. And depending on who is in control of the government at that time, they could just decide, that we're not going to disqualify Trump or we're going to disqualify Trump, depending on
Wow.
if they're, red or blue.
Right.
And that's going to be interesting because you have the president is elected by electoral votes. And so each state has a particular number of electoral votes. And you could see some of those electoral votes disappearing for Trump, just being taken off the table entirely. Let's say, I don't want to say any specific states to speculate, but, like a swing state that has a Democratic government that would probably be more open to this 14th Amendment disqualification interpretation would basically say, we're not going to put Trump on the ballot, and therefore these electoral votes, they're pretty much going to go to whoever the Democratic nominee is, and obviously Biden, but
right.
because there's just not going to be a Republican opponent on the ballot. If Trump won the nomination and
he's disqualified.
He's disqualified in this particular state, we're just not going to put his name on the ballot, and the electoral vote, you can't vote for him, so whoever is on the Democratic ballot will get the whatever votes,
Basically,
when the electoral votes. And in swing states, that could really matter. Now, and perhaps I'm getting kind of ahead of things, but if that happens, or if Republican states foresee that happening, then I could see them saying, well, you know what? We're going to take Biden's name off the ballot.
how?
Well, never put it past Republicans to change the rules in the middle of the game
For themselves.
favor
right?
themselves. And a key point in that is Kentucky, for instance. Did you know that although Kentucky is a very red state, they actually have a Democratic governor?
Really? I actually didn't know that.
And you'd be curious to know that Senator McConnell, who is from Kentucky, if he were to prematurely leave office before the end of his term, guess how he would be replaced?
Probably not in a way you'd normally think, judging by how this conversation's going.
Well, each state gets to decide for themselves how to replace senators midterm. A lot of states just have the governor, who's the leader of the state, the executive leader of the state, appoint someone temporarily to the Senate seat that's vacant. And so I would have to double check on this, but that's probably what was the case in Kentucky. However, just a couple of years ago, the legislature in Kentucky, who it's probably red as hell, decided to introduce a bill that says that no, the governor does not get to pick a replacement for a senator. We just so happen to have a Democratic governor and a very old senator who might need to be replaced in the near future. Let's change the rules. So instead of the governor being allowed to pick a replacement, let's I see. Let's let the party who the senator who left the vacancy belonged to, let's let that party pick a slate of candidates from which the governor would choose his replacement. So basically, the Democratic governor, who would ordinarily be allowed to appoint whoever the fuck he wanted, now has to pick from, I think, three Republican Party selected candidates. So, that's, really, that's how Republicans play the game. They like to change the rules in order to suit them. Now, if there had been a Republican governor in Kentucky, I'm sure you would not have even seen this law.
Right.
This law was only passed a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was going to get at that, but you beat me to it.
Yeah, so this law was only passed a couple of years ago. And so the blatant opportunism and the willingness of Republicans to just play with the very fabric of their own in-state democracy in terms of what powers the governor has. They're willing to change that just for purely partisan reasons. And if they elect a Republican governor, I'm sure, they might give it right back. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll like to keep the power for themselves within the party as a bargaining chip with respect to the governor. Who knows? But
right.
Now, every state is allowed to, do this vacancy replacement. But, the way they see fit. But I think it's just insidious that they would choose to do so at this particular time when there just happens to be a very old and increasingly infirm Republican senator and a Democratic governor with the power to replace him. And removing that power at this particular juncture, I just think, that's how Republicans play. They will change the rules to suit themselves.
Reminds me of
its effect on the democratic process.
Right, at all. But it reminds me a lot of like the typical mind of like a sociopath. Because what do they usually do? They just change the rules regardless to put it in their favor, whatever the case is. You know what I mean? No matter who they screw over, whatever it is. But who's going to suffer? The American people.
You see a lot of examples in this in traditionally red states or cities or whatever, where a Democrat wins, and then the legislature, which is still Republican, will change all the rules to take away the powers of the governor.
Right. So then he can't really do anything.
It was fine under the Republican governor for the governor to have these powers, but now that we have a Democrat there, let's change the rules so he can't really do anything.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And once again, it's like full circle. It's like, well, who's going to suffer now? The American people, because they are power hungry. Like it's so counterproductive.
Yeah, the one thing I like to add with this situation is I'm not truly a Democrat or Republican. I believe in what I call the idealistic anarch, where we as a people, if given the right set of rules, should be able to govern ourselves. Fortunately, we're all idiots and we'll end up killing each other before we do anything of that nature. So, I mean, yes, we do need people to lead us in a direction and path that is beneficial to the people and the country. And right now, I don't see either side having someone who can do that. Now, I mean, further down the line, could that happen? Possibly. But I don't think that the ones who have the power and control to change things are going to let that happen. Like, one of the biggest things I think we need to change in this country is we need to have term limits on senators. No more of this 10, 20 years in a position. It should be like maybe 5. Maybe, who knows, something, nothing
crazy. Sensible. I kind of hear you there. There should be term limits. But one thing I do hear you with, too, is technically, for the longest time ever, I was actually an independent, believe it or not. But in recent years, within the past, I'd say like 8 or so, or maybe a little bit more, because like it takes us back to like Obama's presidency. But I have come to realization that if things stay the way they kind of are now, I tend to lean more left than anything because at this point, that's your only chance of seeing actual change in things that will affect your life. Now, you may ask and say, like, well, how? Because I don't really see it yet. But that's why this kind of takes us back to what we talked about last week. You have to pay attention to what these people do, not what they say. Now, we established last week alone about what like Biden's original infrastructure plan, what it originally entailed. Then Rook enlightened us about the healthcare, the better Obamacare that could have been passed. Why did these things not come out the way they were supposed to? Because Republicans would not pass it the way it stood. So in order to accommodate them, they started taking things out that they didn't want in there so it could pass. Who did
Well,
that hurt? The American people in the end.
so yeah, gee, do you remember that there's supposed to be some kind of a vote later on this year about the budget and like so all the people in government can be paid and everything?
Is that coming? Is it? Are we really that at that time already? Because I wasn't sure when the hell. I wasn't sure if that was a little bit later. I'm a little cloudy on when that process takes. Rook, are you aware of that?
Of what process? The budget?
The budget. Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually in October.
Okay. So yeah, we got another month
That's
for that.
that's when the fiscal year begins.
Now time is flying, man. That's crazy.
I read a comment from our favorite blonde, stupid idiot in the government who shouldn't even be a senator or congresswoman at this point because just the stuff she was spitting when she got elected. But my point, she said that she's going to work with whoever is on her side to try and hold up the funds until they get rid of all these things against Trump and like establish him back as the president. And she had a really like wish list that she was going to tack onto this thing.
Wow.
And if that even comes close to that, this is going to be a very rough year.
This is incredible because the fact that you just said that she's trying to do this to support the man that added $8 trillion to our debt. That alone, let alone the insurrection on January 6th and the racism and everything else this clown has done. Imagine that's what's on her mind right now. Unbelievable.
She wants to be his running mate, and she's kissing his ass left and right, and they're looking to impeach Biden on some bullshit and to get all charges removed from Trump, and they're trying to kick out the DA in fucking Georgia so he doesn't get that indictment doesn't go through. It's ridiculous what they're doing.
It is, and I find it hilarious that like the term impeachment comes up with Biden. Biden didn't do anything that's impeachable.
They're trying to stick something on him that is, you all keep lying.
What?
And they're going to try to find something.
Yeah, I mean, she's been trying to do this since day one, but he didn't do it.
What they're trying to say is that the prosecutions of Trump are politically motivated and being directed by Biden in the White House, and that basically they're selectively prosecuting Trump while protecting Hunter Biden. I don't see evidence of either.
Me neither.
If anything, Biden has just stayed out of the way when it comes to both Hunter Biden and Donald Trump. The prosecutor involved in the Hunter Biden case is a Trump-appointed prosecutor, and Biden hasn't involved himself with that case at all.
Right, stayed out of it.
The judge in that case is also Trump-appointed, so I don't know what else. He didn't replace the judge. He didn't replace the prosecutor. He didn't attempt to. So I don't see what he possibly could have done, even if he wanted to, like what he could possibly do to impact Hunter Biden's case. And in the case of prosecuting Trump, well, I mean, you have to come up with more evidence than saying, oh, well, Biden doesn't like Trump, or it would advantage Biden to prosecute Trump. Otherwise, you're just saying, like, if a former president in an opposing party, or at that point, current president for a lot of his crimes, they're allowed to commit whatever crimes they want, and when they go out of office, they can't be prosecuted. If a opposing party wins, that should not be the case. I'm sorry, and you need more evidence, like facts that say, like, this is how Biden involved himself improperly in the case. Like, you can't just say, well, I think this is happening. No, actual facts. And there would be an argument to say, as president of the United States, he does have certainly the right to be involved in the administration of justice. However, Biden has not done so. He has completely, to use a judicial term, recused himself from Trump. He hasn't commented on it publicly. He, hasn't said anything. His appointee, Merrick Garland at the Justice Department, our Attorney General, even Merrick Garland has not involved himself in it. He appointed a special counsel and then, just stepped away, didn't really comment on the case or anything. So I think this is just Republicans trying to
scrape the bottom of the barrel, right?
just trying to fire whatever accusations that will fire up their base, regardless of whether it has facts or not, which it doesn't.
Gotta grift that money.
Yeah, I mean, they got to raise legal funds to defend Trump somehow.
Right. I mean, maybe I'm overstepping saying this, but I honestly don't think so. But the more this Hunter Biden case kind of comes up, is it just me or does it feel like the new Hillary emails?
No. Hunter Biden's a little different. It's definitely something that they like repeating and hyping up and turning into something it's not. That's true. But with Hillary's emails, there was really nothing there
at all. Yeah.
Whereas with Hunter Biden, it does appear that he probably committed some crimes. And those crimes are, number one, not paying taxes.
Right. Okay, that's fair.
He didn't pay, sufficient taxes on like $1 million or something like that. I forget the amount, but it was a substantial amount.
And it was a gun thing, right?
Also for, like a gun charge. Now, what he was being charged with before, in terms of the plea agreement that he had, he was going to plead guilty to, or I think he did actually, or no, the plea deal got ripped up. So what he was going to plead guilty to was providing false information on his gun application. That sounds horrible, right? But you know what that information was? It was about whether he used drugs. And, Hunter Biden was a drug addict. And,
no denying
that's something that came out. And that he subsequently has been, very honest about. He was a drug addict. And if you're going to, apply for a license to carry a gun and you're asked by the government whether you use drugs, like as a drug addict, you're not going to be like, yes, I use drugs all the time.
Right.
I'm not saying that it's okay to lie, but that is something that a drug addict would probably do. And so, I mean, like you can understand why someone would lie in that situation, because they don't want to incriminate themselves on their application. It's definitely not okay, and he should definitely be held accountable for that. And I think that was sort of the idea of the plea agreement. But since that plea agreement was forced to be withdrawn by the Trump-appointed judge in that case, they're going back to square one, and they're going to, need to charge him again, and they're going to do so. I think they announced that they were going to do so by the end of the month or by October. So fairly shortly, we're going to have not new charges, but they're going to recharge Hunter Biden. And so we'll have to see what comes of that. Then again, this is, Republicans getting us to talk about Hunter Biden instead of Trump's, his
long list, right?
It's a long litany of charges that he's facing that are much more serious than lying about drug use.
Right, on an application. And that's what I was just going to get at. Because, sure, maybe Hunter Biden did, and break a law or something like that. And sure, he's going to have to be held accountable for that. But my real question is if that happens as it will, when will Trump ever be held accountable for anything he's ever done? That's what I want to know. The 91 indictments. You know what I mean? The insurrection. Like the list just keeps getting up.
The indictments are the first step in the process of holding him accountable.
Right. But now we're going to see the squirming effect and we're going to see what really becomes of this now. You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like that's the step in the right direction. But if it was anyone else, they'd be in prison.
Good choice of words, squirming. That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's the way I see it. Because, like, I don't see, like, Hunter squirming or anything like that.
You can't just throw someone in prison. You need to charge them and then put them on trial. And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Right. No, it is. It's just a slow process, especially with him and his money, too. But it's just a very slow process to get shit done, it seems.
Didn't technically Trump, come out saying, "Oh, I'm going to run again," like early in the season?
Probably.
Yeah,
probably.
You know why he did that? So he could say that, "Oh, once I started to run and I became a candidate, they're looking to throw all these charges at me." No, these charges were coming long before the election was even a glint in anybody's eye. It just took time to get this process really to the point where, like, all right, we're charging you now, so get your lawyers.
Right. Well, they had to investigate everything. I mean, the executive branch wasn't going to start investigating while Trump was still in charge because apparently, according to Department of Justice precedent, you cannot charge a sitting president with a crime. But I disagree.
I do
with
too.
That assessment. I think a sitting president should be able to be charged with a crime. Like if he shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, like you should be charged with murder. You should not be charged with murder because you're the president of the United States. Like, no.
Right?
I'm sorry. Like you should resign office at that point if you're going to be, put on a murder trial or something like that. But you can also you can still be president and be on trial.
I think an ex-president actually said that too. You know what I mean? Like it's just unbelievable with this guy. It really is.
One of the biggest differences, other than the fact that there's like 91 charges versus the one Nixon had, it says Nixon came in an era or tried to do sneaky shit in an era where morality was still like a point of man. Your morality and things that you did right and wrong meant something back then. Now, no one seems to give a shit whether you do something good or bad. Don't fuck with me. And so, even that state of environment, they really did take, a belligerent, beaten down, not necessarily a group of people, because it's really everyone that's just fed up with the whole political system. And Trump was like, "Oh, I'm your candidate. I'm a billionaire. I'm not, I'm not the guys that are getting bought by all these, lobbyists and so on and so forth." He's exactly the guy that's getting bought by the lobbyists. Just give me more money.
That's got a lot of truth to it.
You mentioned Nixon. Nixon at least had the decency to resign from office before he was charged.
That's true too. Yeah.
That was that era. Had he not done that, he definitely would have went to jail and his political career would have been completely shattered, even though technically it was anyway. But at least he saved some face. You know what I'm saying? He didn't go through the process of going to
it was still embarrassing for him.
It was, but
he was still the most embarrassing president our country ever had.
Until now.
Yeah. Trump, I'd say definitely took that prize away from Nixon.
Trump makes Bush look like a good president. Like,
Given everything he's done, I have to look in awe at his ability to project. It's almost like he really believes the shit that's coming out of his mouth. Like, oh, these Democrats are coming after me, and this and that and the other thing. It's like he really believes all this shit. At least that's how it comes off.
yeah, no, he
Projects.
probably does.
Yeah, there's probably a degree of self-delusion, but I think he also knows that he's lying.
Right. At the same time, but he's just seeing how far it'll go. And the difference between him and Nixon too was obviously, the time period being one. Nixon didn't have social media and the internet and everything to spread bullshit either. You know what I mean? Trump kind of had that on his side, and that's not the main part, but it definitely helped him get to where we are now, if you think about it. Like, I would love to know what would have happened if none of that shit existed. Would we be in the same boat or wouldn't we? Who knows?
Here's the thing about the social media thing and Trump. Trump and social media is a bad combination for Trump. Not to mention the American people as well, but he's putting himself in a really difficult situation where they may have to take him and throw him in jail because he's mouthing off about judges and prosecutors and possibly tainting jury pools to the point that they may say, hey, listen, you get one more tweet out there, we're going to come and we're going to arrest you and throw you in jail.
I don't know how that hasn't happened already. Remember with the judge, with him holding a bat? Like, really? Like,
they're giving him.
Yeah, that was the district attorney.
Or the DA, yeah, right? Like, really? Like, the fuck are you thinking?
Oh, and and threatening like his daughter, like.
Right. And there was even a couple of people that worked at the polling stations during the last election that had they had to hide out because they were being threatened.
They had to move, and they made their life a living hell because Trump sicked the dogs on them.
Right, for them doing their job appropriately.
Right, they're just like election workers. Like, there's no reason they should be treated like that.
Yeah, like it's such a circus.
Harassed and threatened with violence.
How many people in how many places in red states had people sitting at fucking voting lines with rifles and guns and gee, I wonder who these people are voting for. There was a lot of intimidation this last fucking election, man, and despite that, I mean, yeah, we had the vote at home that helped us with that, but people who actually went out and voted, there was, they had to go through some shit.
Isn't that like an abuse of power to some point, though?
It is, but it's state run, I think. So, even if someone did call the cops and say, "Hey, these people are not supposed to be here," I mean, what can people really do? I mean, maybe with the guns, they could say, "Hey, get out of here." But
well, no, I was talking about the election workers. Obviously, Republicans and Trump, minions were harassing the hell and terrorizing them. Shouldn't that be considered like an abuse of power? Like, you're just upset you lost, so now you're going to attack the people that worked at the polling stations? Like, that's going to change anything? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's ridiculous.
That's when they start crying free speech.
Right? Right? That's what cracks me up.
Oh, speech, free speech. I can't say anything I want. Don't say anything about gays or gender neutral people in books, otherwise we're going to have to ban that.
Especially books. That's what cracks me up, too. Damn, these poor kids with the reading school list, there's probably no books because they're all banned in some states.
Well, I'll be honest. My kids started their first day of school today. All I needed was their Chromebook. No books, no pencils, no pens, no protractors, no crayons, no scissors or glue or all the other lovely pieces of stuff you have to get to send your kids to the first day of school.
Jesus.
God forbid that they fund the teachers in the schools enough to give them supplies for the kids that come in. But nope, all the parents got to do that. Not like we're paying enough taxes for this shit.
Yeah, and some of the schools are not funded the way they probably should be either, too.
I don't know whose fault that is, whether that's the Republicans, Democrats, combination of both.
I think that's a result of them just keeping the status quo and not changing it or not building upon it or putting more money towards it, which is what probably should happen. That's what I think is a result of that. They just see, it seems like it's okay. Let's just leave it alone. And it's like, it's not okay, really. It could definitely be improved. There's no denying
I
that.
don't know. People demand more services, but they're not willing to pay more taxes.
You're right. That would also be an end result, because if you want to pour more money into it, then you also have to pay more in taxes for it as well. It's not
Or they
just going to
say
come out
take
of
it
thin
from
air.
somewhere else without necessarily identifying exactly what it is.
I don't know. When you have big corporations like Walmart that are paying their people garbage, and their people who are working for them are living off of food stamps and subsidiaries that we as taxpayers are paying for, so the billionaires at Walmart can line their pockets with more profit. How is that fair to anybody?
It's not. That's what always cracked me up when you see these like charity things or something that billionaires and millionaires are running. It's like, yeah, they may have donated a little something towards it, something, but you got billionaire and millionaires sitting out there saying, "Oh, we're trying to raise money for this." We don't have it. You know what I mean? Like, things are not great right now for probably a majority of people. So if you're going to try to invest in money or something like that, some people can probably afford to throw a little something at it, but it's not going to be nowhere near the amount of money that they can throw at it. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing.
If I had it, I would, but I don't. You know what I mean?
I think there should be a new stipulation with companies who want to go public, meaning like with stocks and everything, that at the end of the fiscal year, you pay your dividends, you balance your books, and then you give your workers a raise if you're in the black. If you made it in the black and you made a good, decent profit, you give your people a raise, then you pay the fucking investors. Fuck the investors. We'll save them for last. They don't need their money. They have enough.
I mean, that does make sense. I ain't going to lie there.
What percentage of investors in Wall Street are everyday Joes, you and me?
Yeah, probably not many or any. Probably.
Really?
Yeah, for that matter, you're probably right
Depends.
there.
You might be indirectly.
Yeah, indirectly. How's that going to affect you at all?
Like if you have a 401k or something like that, it's just not all large investors. There's institutional investors.
Yeah, and there's small investors too. That's true.
Yeah, but
No, well, I'm saying there's like
all investors,
institutional investors that, like when different companies that you rely on, they also are investors as well. And so, like for instance, health insurance companies also make investments. They don't just collect premiums and have them sit there. They make investments with those.
I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, it's just like I think that if you're only looking for your stocks to be in the black and your stocks to keep going up, you're gonna ruin the balance of the whole thing. There should be ups and downs, not just ups. I mean, sure, some things go down.
I'm sorry, but if you're the CEO of a company, you're being hired to increase profits.
No, I understand that.
You're not being paid to like see downs. You're paid to make the company see ups and to take the company to new heights.
Right, but I think what he's also saying is, or what he's trying to say, is that a lot of companies privatize their gains but socialize their losses.
Yeah.
That's what I think he's trying to say. And that's an American fact right there with a lot of major companies.
That's one of the problems, like with Walmart, is that exact thing. They'll take their profits, and run to the bank and pay their investors and pocket the rest. And then when it comes to the people who are working for them, who made those profits possible, they give them, the last bit of the meat on the bone. And then, go talk to the people to feed you because, they're paying taxes. That's part of the problem. But the other problem is it's like there's no limit for these people with money. And the problem is when you have a lot of money, you have the ability to make a lot more money.
Oh, of course.
Invest. And most of the time they do end up, making more money than they had before. And it's just that just increases the disparity of, those who are just living a day-to-day job. I mean, that, stuff like that will, raise, the taxes in your neighborhood, which will raise the rent in your neighborhood, and all the fucking shit that you buy at the stores and the gas station goes up because, something in your neighborhood happened where it's now worth more. You got these little things that are happening around us that are screwing us all to try to have to find a better job that pays, 6 figures a year. And even that is not enough to really, live comfortable with a family unless you have two incomes that are about fucking almost 150,000 a year. It's getting crazy. Where the gap is getting huger and huger, and it's pretty much just going to be rich and poor, no middle class.
We're pretty much there already. To be honest, I've said this for years, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to continue to say it. Greed is going to be the death of this country if we don't watch out. Greed is going to destroy all.
The rules that are in place will keep this wheel turning. It's not going to stop it. It's just going to keep going. Things have to change. I don't want to say we have to become a socialist society, but technically we already are doing socialistic things.
Right. It's not really uncommon.
If you're not going to provide things for people by taxing everyone fairly, then fuck taxing in general. Take it out.
I can see your point for saying that, though. That does make sense.
To set the rules for a game and then expect everyone to follow those rules while you and everybody else are not following the rules is where, like, rebellions are started from, We left. Why did we leave England? Taxes. That and religious persecution. But
that too.
The king was taxing the shit out of everybody. And while, I don't want to see us here taxed to that extent, we're already getting taxed on everything. You're getting taxed on the money you make. You get taxed on the things you buy. You get taxed on,
they would put a tax. If they could, they put a tax on air.
Spaceballs, here we come. But it's tax on water, an essential of life. I don't know. I think
when you buy it,
the capitalistic system in this country does provide a way to make money and opportunities for everyone. It also is, I want to say, top heavy, to where it could easily be toppled over. Just giving a nudge to the right people up top.
I mean, it's kind of the direction we're headed, to be honest. If we're not already there. Because like you said, if we're not already at just rich and poor, we're going to be there very soon. Because it's like a fire. We're all just standing around watching, but nobody's really doing anything about it. But that's all we got for this week. Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.